Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our very first episode of the Kickoff show, hosted by 845 Sports Nation. And I'm sure you know Kings of the 845 or KOT 845. Let's bring them in right now and get it rolling. Ed Estrada, I'm sure you've been to Middletown High School, any sports event, you've seen Ed Estrada doing some sort of function at those events. And Isaac Cayetano. Who doesn't know Isaac? He's all over 845, Section 9. You follow him on Instagram, all his stories, stats, scores. He is the probably number one go-to place for all your Section 9 news. Isaac, Ed, welcome.
I'm happy to be here. It's going to be a fun season. It's going to be hopefully a long, fun season. I hope it don't go too fast.
Likewise, and just to make sure folks know, in case Isaac has to run out, he is going to be a daddy to be. So,
any second,
any minute.
See me run, you see me scramble, we got to go. I mean, it's time. I can't wait.
All right. So, listen, one of the things we were discussing and talking about is, we want to do something like this each week and preview the coming week's football games and pick a few of them and talk about them and give our picks on what we think the outcome of those games will be. Towards the end of the show, maybe we'll get into the classes and pick who we think our winners are going to be there, who's going to win it all. So listen, let's start off. Let's Goshen, Port Jervis. I believe they're Friday or Saturday.
Friday night, 7 o'clock in Goshen.
At the Great Coliseum.
Yeah, at the Great Coliseum. It is a
beautiful location. They should be very proud out in Goshen.
Yeah, absolutely. They did a great job at that place. I enjoy working out there with them. So listen, Isaac, you're up.
Listen,
who do you got? Give us some info.
I'm gonna go with the Port Jervis Raiders. First things first. Last time the Raiders lost in week 0 was back in 2021. The Cornwall, man. I know I coach at Monticello, varsity football at Monticello as well. So I know a thing or two about playing Port Jervis in week 0. When those boys come out, man, they fired up. They're ready to go. You know what I mean? They're on their way to a 6-peat. They're ready to go. They're gonna play good football. They're gonna be disciplined. Last season, week 0, they didn't have the most disciplined matchup against us in Monticello. So this year, I know it's gonna be something that they're looking to capitalize on for sure. So that's gonna be my pick in that one.
Yeah, Goshen coming off of a 3-7 year last year, trying to get the ball rolling over at in Goshen High School, but this is just a very tough. Port Jervis. This is nothing about Goshen as it is. You're talking about a Red Raider team that's gone to the state quarterfinals each of the last 2 years, losing to Section 1 teams in both those years. And I really think they've got a team this year that can get over that quarterfinal hump in the state playoffs this year in Port Jervis, and that's hard for me to say, being a Middletown guy. Nevertheless, but we always wish our brethren over on the west side of the county a lot of luck. As long as they're not winning the Erie Bell, we
and a lot of experience. A lot of experience.
Yeah, they lost to Rye last year, 28-14, and Rye ended up winning the whole thing last year. And then they lost to Pleasantville, and I think Isaac, you mentioned that some of the rumblings out there is that some of those teams have moved up in classification this year. But they returned Dylan Fox at the quarterback slot. He had over 800 yards last year and 8 touchdowns on the year with a really nice percentage. And the stats that I'm getting are off of Max Prep, so I'm not sure if they're 100%. But Max Prep,
Port Jervis does. Port Jervis uploads. They upload every week.
He had a completion rate of about 62% last year, and on top of it, he ran the ball. 9 touchdowns on the ground, 8 touchdowns in the air. Anthony Theodore's coming back as well for them. So from an offensive standpoint, they're going to be a juggernaut in Class B this year. So I fully expect them to be looking for a 3-peat as Class B champions in Section 9 this year, and finally getting over that first state playoff hump. I think they'll be able to do that this year as well. I don't know as much about them defensively, but talking before the podcast started, we always talk about 3 teams or 3 areas and schools that year in and year out have that consistency from the Pop Warner level right to high school. You're looking at Monroe Woodbury does that, Port Jervis does that, Marlboro does that, where year in and year out they're producing folks like that. And Port this year, you never have to worry about their line play typically. Fundamentally, they're always sound. They can usually run the football. Quarterback is the position where sometimes they're up, sometimes they're done, but they have an experienced guy coming back. So I do think Port's going to take this one against Goshen, and they'll be well on their way to starting the season towards a Class B championship.
Wow, how do I how do I follow that up? I'm going with Port Jervis. They're a powerhouse. They always have been for quite some time. Goshen not coming off of a very good season. I'm going with Port Jervis.
Yeah, and I think, by the way, I do think Goshen is going to be improved off of that 3-7 mark. I think they have Mark McKenna and
well, again,
it's going to be better. It's just
once again, new year, new players. It's a lot changes in high school sports in a year.
Yeah.
So hopefully Goshen comes out with a much better team and has a much better season. I still take Port Jervis.
Great.
Not having to follow up at Estrada, let's do Poughkeepsie and Wallkill. I'll start this one. I'm going to take Wallkill and basically a coin toss. And being a Section 9 podcast, basically it's just take Wallkill.
And you're a Wallkill guy. You got to pick them.
Section 9 over everybody. I told her that too. Section 9 over everybody.
It's neither one of them are coming off a great season.
Yeah.
It's really hard to pick a winner. I mean, it's kind of a coin toss with it, and this is a Section 9 podcast. I got to take the Section 9 team.
Yeah, and Wallkill had some good battles. They were a call or two away from beating Warwick last season. Obviously, they just lost their quarterback, Chris Bartolone. He's going to go play up at SUNY Cortland. Good luck to him in that endeavor. They're going to follow up with another guy, who guys are playing his position. They're in the spread. And Coach Piliteri, he's building up a great program over there. I don't know what the line looks like. I know last year we had an inter-squad scrimmage with them early in the season, and they had a young line. They had a young center. He was a sophomore, so this season he should be a junior. And I'm going to take Wallkill against Poughkeepsie as well. I think they're going to probably throw him out of there like they love to do. But like you said, it's going to be a coin toss. But I think Wallkill they're going to come out on the other end.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as Isaac mentioned, graduating Chris Bartolone, they lost their top rusher to it, and Michael Cullen, who had over 600 yards and 9 touchdowns for them last year. They're losing the offense, and, I think it's Ryan Rauschenbach is going to be their new quarterback, but he was one of their leading receivers last year. So making the move to the quarterback position. This is actually going to be a really good game for Wallkill to kind of get these guys in new positions sorted out before they get into league play.
Right, and they have right after Poughkeepsie they go to Monticello, so they have 2 weeks to figure it out. They got 2 weeks to not before they go against their league opponents.
It's tough for Poughkeepsie. Poughkeepsie's won 1 game over the last 2 years, so they've been on hard times there. They really didn't have anything up out on Max Preps that I can find down in Section 1. I mean, listen, Section 1's a tough section football-wise from top to bottom anyway, so it's not easy for them, I'm sure. But I just think Wallkill, with the discipline they have, and it's not like Rauschenbach is brand new to the team. He's on the team. He understands what they're trying to accomplish in Panther Nation. So I do think Wallkill is going to take this one over Poughkeepsie as well. I don't think it's going to be as close as Mr. Diller wants to portray it to be, but we'll see. But Wallkill, Panther Nation.
Yeah.
All right, Marlboro, Spackenkill. Ed?
So Marlboro and Spackenkill, I'll go back to what I just said a couple of minutes ago about the fact that the Dukes have it going when it comes to consistently producing at that level. They did lose to Port Jervis. Unfortunately for Duke Nation this year, it's probably going to be the same scenario for them. They finished 7-3 last year. They did beat Spackenkill 31-0. I think it was the first game of the year last year as well for them. They did graduate their quarterback, Miles Brooks. He had 18 touchdowns last year in the air and 18 touchdowns total, 10 in the air, on the ground. So they're going to, I think they're looking at Carter Revecchio as their starting quarterback for this year. But like I said, it's a system, right? Some of these schools that have this pipeline, it's not really about the player, it's about the system. And as long as the player has grown up in that system and is practiced in that system, they usually produce no matter what. So I do think they'll beat Spackenkill, who's coming off a 3-7 year from last year. Brian Hoyt is going to be their quarterback. One of the issues for them is going to be who's going to run the football because they graduated their running back, Dan Collins. So we'll see what happens. They got a kid by the name of Josh Lewis, who's going to be getting hopefully the passes from Mr. Hoyt. So, but I think it's a tough matchup for the Spartans, and Marlboro will take it.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Dukes as well. They're gonna open up the season with a solid win, probably just as convincing as last season. Like you said, Spackenkill just has to figure out way too much early on. And one thing you can count on from Marlboro, if they won't beat Spackenkill offensively, they're gonna beat them defensively. Marlboro's gonna play defense. That's one thing you can count on about those guys. I love that about their program. And again, that's been the problem when it comes to having to play Port Jervis because their defense is, it's been solid, it's been exceptional. But Port Jervis's defense is also solid, exceptional. In that offense, they don't take too long to score. But I believe Marlboro, they're going to open up the season with a win against Spackenkill on Thursday.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you, or with the two of you, with Marlboro. They're a gritty team, like you said. Defense is phenomenal. Yeah. I'm going to agree with the two of you and go with Marlboro.
Yeah.
Burnt Hills, Boston Lake versus Cornwall.
Good ones.
These are good. This is going to be a good game.
It is. It's going to be a good game. I'm going to go with Cornwall. The offense that those guys are running over there. I mean, they practically sprinted through Section 9 last season, and I mean that literally. They sprinted through Section 9 with the no-huddle offense. Again, something that you talk about a coach, right? You talk about a coach that came in from Texas, nevertheless, right? He's going to have a lot of ideas. He's going to have a lot of things what he wants to do. The way he got, obviously, you got a great staff. We're talking about Cornwall. We're talking about another one of those programs that build kids, from 5 years old to 18. But the way he installed that offense and got these guys, they're not moving down the field with one play. They're going down the field with 3 plays at a time. You know what I mean? They're quarterbacks going in huddle with 3 plays at a time. They know what's coming next. It's a lot to figure out in week 0, especially from a team in a different section. It doesn't say you're going to win the game. It doesn't say you're going to win the game because you have, you have the better playbook. You have, the know-how offense. It doesn't say you're going to win the game. But I'm going to pick Cornwall to win this game this week. I think they have a big season in store for them.
Yeah, I agree with you on that as well. And like you said, Cornwall has been powerhouse in their division or their class for quite some time. I don't see that changing anytime soon. So I'm going to take Cornwall as well. Ed?
So this was going to be close. And the reason why I say that is because you can't, and I agree with you 100%, Isaac. It's another program similar to Marlboro and Monroe and Port that's like a pipeline. It's a system. The kids know the system from very young until they get into high school. And I think, that's a testament to what they produce out there every single year. Somebody steps up in that program for somebody who's graduating. And that's what's going to have to happen again this year. In graduating Jaden Laureano, who was a complete stud, 114 for 172, over 1,400 yards passing, 16 touchdowns in the air, another 3 on the ground. They graduated him. Tyler Vanderpool, 30 touchdowns last year. They graduated him.
And he got injured.
So Quinn Pekarski's got his work cut out coming in and throwing the football for the Dragons. I think he's going to do just fine, and they'll win another sectional championship. They have a couple of juniors and Alunga Salerno and Dan Tume and Mason Lott, who are coming back to hopefully take up the slack for what they lose with Vanderpool. But I think their strength this year is going to be in the air, with Pekarski throwing to Connor Cruz is back for them. And Versfeld is back there as well. The thing with Burn Hills Boston Lake is that's a really good team. They lost last year to Averill Park, who ended up doing well in the state tournament last year. They did lose their quarterback. Yanuzzi graduated for them. However, they have a really good running game. They have 2 running backs coming back that combined scored 24 touchdowns last year on the ground. So they have some experience in the backfield. And the one way you can beat a team like Cornwall is if you have a really good running game and you keep their offense off the field. Yeah. So if Burnt Hills can do that, that's going to shorten the game and make it a little bit more difficult. And the last thing you want to do is have Pekarski in his first year at the helm, not his first year, he's a senior, but at the helm, having to throw to come back from behind. And I think I just saw that Connor and Dylan were not coming back.
Yeah, that's what.
That's what the comment was.
That's my fault. So, so it's going to be interesting. Like you said, Isaac, though. Yeah. I like the system and I like the pipeline. So you kind of go back to that all the time. So I'm going to give it to Cornwall in a very close game. But heads up, would not be surprised that if Burn Hills runs the football well, that they come away with a W.
Yeah.
All right.
Either way, it makes Cornwall stronger coming back to Section 9.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. All right, last one we got, Arlington and Newburgh.
So you want me to start with that one?
Yeah, sure. Take it off there.
Boy, what a year the Admirals had up in Arlington and Poughkeepsie. They went 10-0. Had already beaten a Carmel team by a good margin, and then had to face Carmel in the championship game in Section 1 and ended up losing to them. So, it was a great season nevertheless. They do, unfortunately, graduate just about everybody. I think in the notes that I took, let me see if I can find out who they lost here. But I know they lost their quarterback. Mike Resigno threw for over 1,800 yards and 23 touchdowns last year. He's no longer there. And by the way, he was also a 1,000-yard rusher. I think I mentioned that to these guys before, and had 14 touchdowns. So that's 37 touchdowns by one guy, and he's out. They also lost their second leading rusher, Davenport, who had 15 touchdowns. So that's a lot to replace. Newburgh, and I think, Isaac, I'm going to leave it to you to give us some news on the Goldback quarterback position. But Newburgh does have some folks coming back. Montgomery, I think, is one of their running backs. I think the Goldbacks will have enough to take care of Arlington, but it does set up for a really up and down season for who's going to take that Class AAA crown in Section 9 this year between Middletown, Newburgh, and Monroe-Woodbury. Again, the triumvirate are back once again. I think Pine Bush and Kingston get a little better, but we'll leave that off for a side discussion. I'm going to take Newburgh over Arlington because I just think that's too much offense for the Admirals to lose this past year.
I agree. Yeah. I'm gonna go with Ed there as well. I'm gonna take Newburgh. Obviously, the big news that Ed was talking about was that Mason Cole, Newburgh's quarterback, they've been molding, has played for them in some big games. I mean, the biggest games under the grandest lights. He moved, he left, went over to Spackenkill. I have it on good word that there's another quarterback in the program that's ready to take it over. He's good, he's athletic, can throw the ball, can run the ball. They also have another running back stepping up to replace Tajir Walker, Tajir Walker did a great job for Newburgh last year.
Big load to bring down.
Big boy to bring down. They lost Fabian Roden, which is huge. That's a big piece in that offensive line to lose. But I'm guessing that in Newburgh, it's not hard. I mean, it's going to be hard to find another Fabian Roden, but it won't be hard to find another guy built like Fabian Roden. So they'll be able to reload on the offensive line. They got Lambert that they brought back, Leggett that they brought back at tight end. That's a good target for those guys. And so I'm gonna take Newburgh. They only lost 2 games last season, went 8-0. The 2 games that they lost was to Middletown. We joked about it before we went on air. They lost twice in Newburgh, which kind of makes that 3 or 4 losses, obviously, to the public eye. But this season, like I said, I think this season is all about how they're getting back to the AA crown. When they get back to the AA crown, how they play against Middletown when they get there. And the tough thing about it is they have to go to Middletown this year. It won't be at home in Newburgh. So I'm going to take Newburgh over Arlington.
Yeah, after hearing Ed's commentary there on 1,000-yard rusher, 35 touchdowns being, leaving the high school, and I'm going to have to go with Newburgh as well. I was going to go with Arlington, but then after hearing those numbers, that's just a lot.
The unknown here that we'll find out is when you have – listen, Arlington is a humongous school.
Yes.
They have the people that somebody can come out of the woodwork that we don't know about because we're on the west side of the river, so we don't really that stuff.
In games like that, mainly for me, if you have a lot to figure out offensively, who are you going against defensively? And you don't want to figure those things out against a Newburgh defense because again, offense is one thing. But Newburgh will play defense. They will tackle you. You will go down. They're not, you know what I mean? You're not going to
go back. And the go backs historically, and maybe unless I'm not remembering correctly, but I think they historically start off the year pretty well. Newburgh doesn't, come off to slow starts or anything that I'm aware of in the past. And they always play, solid football teams in the start. That's one of the things I've been really impressed with, and we can talk about it, is the caliber of opponents that Section 9 teams are taking on in this very first week is really a testament to where teams want to be by the time they get to the end of the year.
Yes. And we talked about that also before we got on air. It's 2 things, right? 1, week 0, which is why I love it. I love week 0. It gives you an opportunity to, just call a coach and say, hey, do you want to play? Right? Secondly, Section 9 has seen success in the postseason, past the Section 9 championship a lot in the past couple of years, a lot. You know what I mean? So now we're getting there, right? You got to think about it. Port Jervis wasn't going to the state tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Right, 6 years ago, we weren't going to the state tournament. That wasn't happening. Obviously, Newburgh was going. Middletown, they just played their first game in the state tournament last year for a long time, for first time in a while. Cornwall, you had Minnesota who was going to the state tournament when they won the championship. You had Our Lady of Lords who went to the state tournament. So these new teams, they're winning the Section 9 championship, and they're finding out like, okay, so Section 9 is one thing. New York State is a whole nother, right?
So Ed, you got the tally for our picks?
I have them. I got them all written down. So what we'll do is that we'll keep track of them, throughout the season, end of the season, we'll see who's where and who ranks where, and go from there.
So this year, it's still AA, right? We don't have any AAA.
Right, it's still double A.
5 classifications in football.
So I'm looking at the Section 9 website, and it's got in AA, Newburgh, Middletown, Monroe, Kingston, Pine Bush, and Valley Central has been added to the AA's this year.
Valley Central's coming up
on there. So unfortunately, I didn't get a chance. I didn't even see it. Is VC playing in this first week?
VC Valley Central is, I believe VC is playing. Give me 1 second.
I don't have them playing in this first week.
Nope.
No, Valley Central's not playing week 0. No.
I have them at home against Washingtonville in the second week. That'll be a good first game.
That will be.
I know the Wizards had
Washingtonville's going to be young. They're going to be young this year. I know that for sure. We played Washingtonville last season. Talked to the coach before the game, and he was loving last season. He knew this season they'd be young and they'd probably be in for it. But again, year after year, you build a tradition, you build a foundation. You'll be surprised what the young guys step up and do. So that'll be a good test for Valley Central. They got a new coach, got Aiden White there. So we'll see. We'll see if they can shake some feathers in AA.
So I'm trying to look at some of the rest of the schedule for this opening week. We got Fallsburg and Liberty,
which is another. It's not interesting. It's not, nobody talks about Liberty or Fallsburg as a top team, but Fallsburg is coming in from 8-man to play 11-man football. That'd be the third team in Sullivan County to play 11-man football. So I'm excited for that as a coach in Sullivan County. Obviously, the county isn't that successful, so I'm super excited to see another team get to rise from 8-man to 11-man. I'm interested. Who knows? Maybe Fallsburg come out and they beat Liberty. So it's a kind of it's a rivalry game instantly. So we'll see.
Fallsburg was 5-3 last year in there, so it's going to be, like you said, it's good to see that they've got enough numbers now to get to that next level. And then you have Here's a good one: North Rockland hosting Monroe Woodbury. Crusaders are really interesting this year. As typical, it's always going to be of whether or not they can find offense.
Yes.
Their defense is going to be there. They're not going to have a lot of penalties in the game. They're not going to turn the ball over a lot. Last year, it's weird. Last year, if you look at their schedule, they only scored. Where did I write it? They never scored more than 20 points in any game last year.
Wow, really?
But they also didn't allow, except for the 2 Newburgh games that they played, they didn't allow anybody else to score more than 21 points in a game. So the games are close. They're low scoring typically. And Monroe Woodbury in a low scoring game typically wins because of their fundamentals.
Agreed.
As a matter of fact, they beat Middletown last year.
Great. Yep.
And I went to that game down in Central Valley, and they beat Middletown because I think the game was 24-20 or something, 21-20 or something like that. And it was because Middletown made mistakes and they didn't. And you knew they weren't going to do it. They do an outstanding job with their blocking schemes on the offensive line to create holes for their running backs. And from a defensive line perspective, they're very consistent and fundamentally sound. So I think, between, as Ed mentioned earlier, trying to come up with who's going to win what class, we all kind of thought that we'd have repeat winners in the section this year, with the one caveat being that AA, not knowing how things will pan out. So I'd be interested to hear from what both of you think in that class AA.
No, I agree. Going up, obviously D Burke's already got D. C, I think O'Neill will win C. They'll be better than Chester. B, Port Jervis. We already talked about them. No one's beaten Port Jervis. Same thing for Cornwall. But like I said, in AA, it's Middletown. I'm gonna go with Middletown. I'm gonna pick Middletown to start the season. We'll see where the season goes. They have 3 good backs in the backfield. Got JoJo Royal coming in as a freshman. It's hard to pick.
In his 3rd year as a freshman.
That's what it's hard to pick against a guy that just won a Section 9 title in 8th grade. I mean, the kid literally won the bell game and then went back to recess the next day. I don't know how I'm going to pick against him in freshman year. Middletown's going to play defense. Same thing that we just talked about. Middletown's going to play defense. They got a great defensive coordinator and Chris Conklin. I think it's middle. Again, you got to beat the king. You got to beat the king. Middletown proved last season that they were the king, and they proved they were the king in a stunning fashion, right? You could beat Newburgh once in Newburgh. To beat them twice, in Newburgh, in a final. I honestly, there's absolutely no way. I have Middletown coming out as the number 1 team in Section 9 in an hour, and I don't think it's any way it can go any other way.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you on all of them, from AA all the way down to D. I believe everybody that won it last year is going to win it again. Again, if Newburgh comes out hot, I think Newburgh.
Well, that surprise quarterback Isaac was talking about. Who knows?
Right. Newburgh has. I think that's the only option I see of Middletown not winning is if Newburgh comes out hot and kind of runs away with it.
I think Middletown. I think talking about that game, I think Middletown has to beat Newburgh at Middletown during the regular season. I do not. That number 1, right? Obviously, listen, Newburgh. I don't care if Newburgh goes 0-10 the following season. They're gonna believe they're number 1, right? Mm-hmm. I don't care. I don't care if it's 4-5. I don't care what the season is. Coming in, a lot of people are gonna think Newburgh's number 1. I think Middletown cannot let Newburgh come in Middletown, beat them, get all riled up. And I don't know where the AA championship is, but I believe it's back in Newburgh. Chances are it's back in Newburgh. I'm not sure.
It'll probably. I got to tell you though, I don't know where they're going to have it this year.
It's not decided.
Has section soccer and things of that nature going on, but don't count out the new Dietz is opening this year.
When I first moved here, when I first moved to Port Jervis, New York, that's where the championships used to be. I mean, that's again games like that, stadiums like that. That's what got me into football.
Yeah, Kingston is actually starting on the road the first couple of weeks this year while they finish up the renovations up at Dietz. But I think their first game is in about 3 weeks up at Dietz. So there'll be 3 options. There'll be either Monroe Woodbury, Newburgh, or Kingston for the a chance to host the sectional final. Again, and we all 3 of us talked about it before we got on the podcast. The school district's got to want to host it first, and kind of go from there. But Dietz will be brand new, so it might be a good location as they try to get back into that loop of hosting championship games. And it might be listen, Kingston's going to have a rough year. But the Tigers are going to be better than last year.
Agreed.
In my opinion, and they always find a way to put up a lot of points typically. So we'll see how that turns out. But it with the chances, I agree with both of you that it's a Newburgh Middletown with keep a side eye to Monroe Woodbury out there. So Kingston might be the true neutral field to play on. In a final, I know folks in Middletown weren't too happy that they had to go back a second time.
No, they weren't.
To Newburgh to have to beat them a second time, but Coach Drenfell was like, "It doesn't really matter. You got to play them." So
I agree.
Yeah, and so I think I think Middletown's going to take it. I think the concerns about who they graduated on the line are legitimate concerns, but I also think. We talked about the fact that the guys who are on the line for Middletown this year did have to practice against that top line last year. And so they know each other well. They know how to play. Coach Strenfeld and Coach Chris, they've now started to put together a run here of a pipeline and a system that Pop Warner is feeding into. And they're always the goal. And that has begun to take mold in Middletown. They've had winning years now for several consecutive years. And after they won the section title last year, they gave CBA of Albany a run for about 3/4 of that game before CBA just had too much firepower towards the end. But they played well in that first ever opportunity at a state playoff too.
And I hate to harp on it, but how could we not? We're living in history. We're talking about with an 8th grade quarterback. We're talking about every single accomplishment we just listed. They did with an 8th grader at the helm.
And I think I told you before we started that a little bit biased because I see him all the time, but Jelani Graham is the real deal. I think he's a D1 player, and I think as long as that line continues, just the line doesn't even have to really be on the plus side. If they can just hold themselves, Jelani Graham is a big enough guy.
Yep, he'll come plowing through.
Yeah, we talked about Walker at Newburgh being a big load to bring down. Jelani Graham not only has that physique to do that, but he's got the speed on top of it, breakaway speed. So I think Jelani Graham's going to put some notches in his belt for being Player of the Year in Section 9 along. Well, it depends on different levels, classifications.
Yeah, but he was already Player of the Year last year, indeed. So that'd be.
And I agree with you guys. I think Cornwall again in Class A. If you had to pick a team in Class A who might give them a run, who would it be?
For me, I'd split that vote between Minnesink and Lords. Lords. They had an up-down season last season, lost to Washingtonville. I think that shocked a lot of people, but they made it back to the finals, you know what I mean, which counts for something. They made it back to they beat Minnesink. I was there. I was at Minnesink. I thought Minnesink was going to win that game, and I thought we were going to have a Cornwall-Minnesink part 2 because if you remember in the regular season, Cornwall beat Minnesink on a Hail Mary.
Yeah.
So that the championship game, it wasn't even a solidified Cornwall win at that time. So I thought Minnesink was going to win that game. Lords come out, beat them 14-12, make it back to the championship game. So if I had to put a vote in, I'd go Minnesink Lords.
Yeah.
I like Warwick. Like I said, Washingtonville is going to be young. FDR is coming back into the division. I'm not ready to say that they're going to compete with Cornwall yet. I like Warwick, but for some odd reason, something's haunting Warwick when it comes to the playoffs. Something is over Warwick when it comes to the playoffs. When it comes to the second round, they just can't get it done now.
In the past for the Wildcats, it's been the defense. I mean, they've been putting up points. They put up points with the best of them.
Yes.
But do they have enough on defense to do it? Obviously, against Cornwall, I don't think so. But I think they have enough offense and continuation on offense that they might be the ones that, finish up second and maybe make it to the final over them. Minnesing's been really disciplined, but I think Warwick with the firepower might be the team. And who knows?
Minnesink, man, you talk about offensive lines too, man. They're always top 5 Section 9. I mean, they're creating units over there. Those guys, I don't know who's the O-line coordinator over there, but he's doing a great job. He does a great job. Those are big boys. They have a damn good quarterback in Robbie Labrera. I don't want to butcher his name, but Robbie, number 5.
Say yourself.
Robbie, let me not do Robbie, number 5, you're a dog. He's a dog. He's a damn good quarterback. Hopefully they got some weapons on the outside, some running backs to complete with that. But again, 2 things you can rely on is a good offensive line, and Minnesing's going to play defense, and that takes you a long, long way.
And in anybody and what do you think, Ed? Anybody that floats your boat out in Class A?
With Cornwall, I don't see. I mean, I might see a close game, but for the most part, I don't see anybody beating Cornwall. I'll agree with Minnesink, maybe, but Class A, I just think Cornwall's.
Yeah, listen, when
Cornwall right now in Class A is the Burke of Class D. Just give it to him.
and Port Jervis is that to Class B. They're that to Class B.
I'm looking at listen. Outside of Marlboro, I mean, the Sawyers had a good year.
I have the Sawyers on Saturday. They graduated the quarterback. You know what I mean? They went.
That's what I didn't know that, so I was trying to figure out whether or not they had enough.
Yeah, they graduated the court. They graduated. They got perimeter guys on the outside. They went empty all last season. But they're building something. Went 7-2, 7-3 last season. Competed with Marlboro. I think it'll be hard to copy that season. Marlboro, again, rivalry game for Port Jervis, but Port Jervis. Okay, we'll put this to put this in perspective. I graduated in 2021. I won a championship there in 2019. They have not lost since. Okay, It was 2020. You're right. The head coach, Damian Shaharsky, he was my JV football coach. I remember we were crying in tears saying bye to Shaharsky. We had no idea he was going to become the varsity head coach the next season. The guy is 5 for 5, on his way to 6 for 6. They have the formula.
Yeah.
You get to a certain point in the program where you have the formula. They got Carol Goshen. I mean, big kid, another Jelani Graham build kind of kid. They got the 1-2 punch. You got Anthony Theodore, which, the kid is fast. Again, all of these kids, I'm not just saying it. I had to actually play against these guys last season in week 0.
I saw that comment coming off on the podcast from Jaden DeMarco talking about that the backfield is crazy. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, it is. And that's what we talked about again before here, too. Matchup 146 between Port Jervis and Middletown is going to be electric. Yeah,
the Erie Bell, folks, and hopefully we'll have that game not only on the Middletown live stream, but we're going to try to see if we can simulcast those games on 845 Sports Nation as well. Yeah. The Erie Bell game, which is
there's a few games we want to do. We still got one more issue to iron out. But September 21st is Port Jervis, Erie Bell. October 10th, we were just talking about it, or Isaac was just talking about it a minute ago. Newburgh and Middletown.
That's 2 days before my birthday. That's a gift. That's a gift. Yeah.
And then November 1st is Monroe. So those are the 3 games we're looking at streaming right now out in Middletown. Anybody watching, listening, whatever, get in touch with your athletic directors to reach out and listen. We'll be more than glad to come out and do a bunch more. This is something new. We're trying to get Section 9 sports out.
Right. Again, and the main thing here, again, guys, for anybody watching it, I know a lot of people is going to watch this back. The guys right across the river, they have this stuff and more, right? Media day and more. Okay, when we tell you talk to your ADs, those are the guys who control this situation. Those are the guys who control what we can come in and do, how much we can do it, where we can do it. I know you guys are on your phones 24/7. So you see low HUD and you see what we have. You know what I mean? We want to get you guys there. We want to maximize exposure. That's been my sole purpose since 2019. It's been 845 Sports Nation's sole purpose since they got in here. We have the athletes. Okay, obviously Section 1 is bigger. It's a gauntlet over there, but we're competing with these guys every year, man. So you guys do yourselves a favor, right? You only get 4 years in high school. You only get 4 years of high school. You only get that feeling to run back and check in the paper and run back or check KOT. You only get it one time. So again, contact the ADs. Talk to your ADs, encourage your ADs, and tell them.
Talk to your coaches. Your coaches will go to your ADs.
Yeah, but
get in touch with your coaches.
You're gonna have 50 emails from the AD. They're gonna call.
Just not to thank Ed Diller here, because Ed really got Isaac and myself together here within the last literally 48 to 72 hours. We put this podcast together, and as soon as he spoke with Isaac and spoke with me, we were like, of course we do this. We want to promote our Section 9 athletes. Hopefully this will continue into the fall and the winter sports and the spring sports as well. Our goal, Ed, I think, is to try to maybe come back every Sunday after each week is done to kind of talk about results over the weekend and then look at the games coming up in the future. But to your point about September 21st, that Erie Bell game, you know, a lot of you guys know it's one of the nation's longest running football rivalries, going back to the 1800s. And it doesn't matter whether Port Jervis is Class B and Middletown's Class AA. Those games typically go down to the very end. This year happens to be at Fowler Field on Saturday afternoon at 1 o'clock. So if you can't make it out to Fowler, by all means, join 845 Sports Nation and MIDI TV, and we'll be simulcasting that game, hopefully on a live stream.
Yeah. You guys have anything else?
No, I mean, I do. I wanted to briefly, if you guys wanted to, just look at the Saturday games, you know, just to mention and give everybody their just due. Also on Friday is Dover and Haldane taking part as well. And FDR and Royce Ketchum. You mentioned, Isaac, that FDR has come back to Class A.
Yeah, which I'm happy to see. They've had Coach came in, Coach Barger from Stepinac, I believe Stepinac. Don't quote me on that. And he let his guys play independent for about the last 3-4 years. And now he feels it's time to go back to Class A and compete with the big boys. So we'll get to see.
And a beautiful field up in Hyde Park. They have a nice stadium.
Beautiful field. So he's taking on Ketchum. They went 2-7 last year over in Section 1. So they start the season with those guys, and you know it'll be. We'll see what FDR brings to the table this season. I'm happy to see them back in competing in divisional play and seeing what's going on.
Saturday, you got Rondout Valley taking on New Paltz. Sullivan West takes on Livingston Manor, Roscoe Millbrook. Ellenville's hosting Caro Durham. Briarcliff hosts Highland, Beacon, and Red Hook. That's going to be an interesting matchup.
Yep.
As the Bulldogs take on the Raiders. Menacing Valley is going to head down to Suffern. Suffern had a good year last year down in Section 1, so it's going to be interesting. I don't know who they graduated, but as you mentioned, Isaac, the Warriors are always strong.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Again, we got to remember week 0. Each team gets the opportunity to make these matchups. You know, ADs talk, coaches talk, but we get the opportunity. You know, we get the freedom as coaches to reach out. You know, so every time I look at a matchup, I kind of look at it as why, right?
Yeah.
Why did coach want to play? If you're going to be a rookie. If you're losing a lot of seniors, why are you calling Suffering to play week 0? You must be trying to figure something out. You must have a little better team than I thought. So I try to keep that in mind too for week 0 games.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
Chester's headed down to Tuckahoe, which is interesting. Tuckahoe had a great team 2 years ago. Made a run in the state playoffs. Not sure what Chester has coming back this year, but the Hamiltonians they do a nice job down there. And then Kingston's at Nyack. Another thing that you ask, Isaac, is why are you scheduling that type of game? Is there something we should know?
What is there? Is there something I should know? I always try to look a little bit closer. But that's a good game. And we're on the road. A lot of Section 9 is on the road in these big.
Yeah, everybody's on the road. It seems like Middletown's headed 3 hours away.
Yeah,
Middletown. Coach Strentville has the Midi Bears up at Baldwinsville taking on the Bees up at Central New York. And then Our Lady of Lourdes is headed out to the LaSalle Institute. So a lot of weird but interesting matchups definitely on the slate for this weekend as Section 9 starts off the school year. I'm excited.
Great. Thanks everyone for joining us. Again, we'll be back Sunday. We'll check on our picks, look at the following week's game schedule, pick some more football. And,
do we know what time on Sunday?
We'll work on that.
Okay.
All right.
But let's try to go to the evening so we're not going up against the NFL on Sunday.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. Yeah, we don't want to do that. Right in between the 4 o'clock and the 7 o'clock games.
All right, we'll figure it out off air. All right, thanks, guys.
Take it easy, guys.